everyone and welcome back to my channel Brings Joy Homeschool. Today's video is very special. I'm going to be talking about the school I work at, that is the Waldorf School of Peninsula in California. And I'm going to be interviewing some of my colleagues and I'm going to ask them what Waldorf education is. So many of you have asked me about Waldorf education, so I thought it would be best to ask some of my colleagues and let you all know everything about Waldorf schools. So let's get started. First person we're going to interview is Miss Marina Boudries, and she is a Waldorf School alumna and also a Waldorf School humanities teacher. Welcome, Miss Boudries. Let's get started with my questions. My first question is, what is Waldorf education?
So in a nutshell, I think what I would say Waldorf education is a relationship between the student, the teacher, and whatever the experience or object that the students are looking at. So it's very interactive in the sense that it's always building a relationship between the students and the teachers and the environment that they are studying.
Wow.
In a nutshell, there's a lot more I could say.
Of course, yes. How would you describe a Waldorf school?
So I've been to quite a few Waldorf schools because I actually attended quite a few as a kid, so I've experienced them in a variety of ways. I think something that's common across and at every Waldorf school is that it feels very lively. When you get to a Waldorf school, there's a lot of noise, there's music, there are conversations, there's dialogue, there's running around, so there's a lot of activity. And it feels very vibrant, and you usually get there and you're like, ooh, I wonder what all these students are doing, or why are they painting on the walls, or what are they, making in this science class, and why is there an explosion, those type of things. So I think it's very lively would be the word that I would say describes a Waldorf school.
Yeah. Thank you. My next question is, what about our school makes you the most proudest, and can you share a favorite story or memory?
Yeah, I think this school in particular, so something characteristic to Waldorf schools is they tend to reflect the community they're in, so that's why they're different all around the world. So here, because we're in Silicon Valley, our school is very entrepreneurial, and that means that it's both our faculty that is always thinking of new things and also the students. So it's very exciting because people are always coming up with new ideas and new ways to do things, whether that means putting a mural on the side of a building or coming up with a food truck idea to implement, or going on a new agriculture trip, which I just went on with the 9th grade, so that's a recent favorite memory. So for 2 weeks we were at different farms, one Vegelution, which is a farm in East San Jose that serves the low-income community there and provides fresh produce to the food insecure families that live around there. So we spent a whole week there, and then we get to come back and talk about different agricultural systems and how agriculture works in America. And that's a new class this year. So those type of things that we get to do here as teachers, but also as students, is really exciting to me.
Great. Thank you. Describe the feeling inside our school.
So definitely entrepreneurial, like I said before,
yes.
Definitely innovative, creative, active. Yeah, I think those words would all fit.
Totally, yes. Why do Waldorf, no, this one's a great question. Why do Waldorf students stay with the same teacher for 8 years? And I'll tell you why. Because I'm a homeschooling mom, and my kids have the same teacher, and that's why I really love Waldorf education for this one. One of the reasons being this, that they have the same teacher in middle school, right? From elementary to middle school.
Yeah, 1st through 8th grade.
True. So can you tell us a little bit why do we have the same teacher here?
Yeah, sure. So I think part of it, and you probably understand this homeschooling, is that it takes a while to get to know students. It's not like, oh, I taught them for 1 week and I suddenly know how to perfectly meet them and help them and support them to grow. It takes a while. So part of that relationship you build over those 8 years allows a teacher to actually see first all the progress the student makes, and also the places that they need support, they can really cater to them in a very individual way. So there's a real relationship between who the student is as a person and their gifts and the things they need and what the teacher sees in them. And that takes time. You all know that. It takes time to really form a relationship with someone. And then the other thing I would say that's important about it, and people used to always ask me this because I was a Waldorf kid, what if you hate your class teacher?
Oh, yes, yeah.
What will you do? You're stuck with them for 8 years. And people had all their different answers when we were kids, but a big thing that I look back on now and say about it is, Well, in a lot of situations in life, you don't get to choose who you work with. You don't get to choose who you have to do certain projects with. So it also helps build this kind of strength and resilience, like, oh, maybe I don't like that this person's like this, but I can also appreciate them for this strength, and I can find the way to see the best in them.
That's a life skill there, right?
Yes, I think so.
Good. So my next question is, are Waldorf schools religious?
Yes, I think this is a loaded question. It comes up often. I think something I should preface before I answer that question is just that everyone is welcome at a Waldorf school. And I think that might be a concern for some people asking this question, like, can I come if this is my belief system? And so, no, in the quick answer, a Waldorf school is not religious. The reason that this question gets asked is that there is a big part of the pedagogy that looks at and thinks about how human beings exist in the world, and a big part of that is thinking about them in the light of their potential or their higher self. And you could use a lot of different words for that, and different religious practices use different words for that, but the idea itself is that everyone has a part of themselves that's the best part of themselves. That's what we're trying to educate and to try to get the students to, so that they can be their best version of their self.
Wonderful. Great. And my last question for you is, how well do Waldorf graduates do on standard tests and college?
Well, as a Waldorf graduate myself, I think I did pretty well. But I think in general, students who apply themselves are able to do whatever they want to do. So they have the support here, and they have the skill set to be ready for whatever course of study they want to undertake. And I think one of the biggest parts that's unique to a Waldorf school, perhaps, and probably a lot of other schools too, but is that students are not only prepared academically, but they're also prepared as, like, I'm an individual, I know who I am, I know what values I have, I know what's important, what's good, how can I be a good person. All of those things are also part of the education. So that really prepares students for college as well.
That's wonderful. So thank you so much, Ms. Butris, for your time.
Sure.
Hello, so that is my colleague, Miss Allison Davis, and she is the high school chair and the high school faculty here at Waldorf School of the Peninsula. And I have a few questions for you, Miss Davis. My first question is, describe the feeling inside our school.
The feeling inside our school, I think, is a place of creativity and agency, I hope. I hope the space and the way that we use it is structured in such a way that the students feel that what they do in here matters, and what they do is actually like the body of the school. So that they see their artwork, they see their painting, like even the fence posts in the garden here where we're sitting, the trellis of the gazebo behind us, like all of these things were made by students. So I hope they feel like they're in a place that exists because they are here, like through their work, and that the school comes into being through who they are.
That's wonderful. I hope so too. Why do Waldorf schools discourage TV watching?
This is a big question in sort of our culture at large, and particularly in our school. Because we're located in Silicon Valley, and because a lot of the families that send their kids to our school work in tech, so work for Apple or work for YouTube and Google, but see that there's something about those technologies that doesn't always promote growth and development in the way that we would hope. So for the younger kids especially, watching TV and being on screens, even if there's a game to play, it's a much more passive experience than just interacting with the world as it is. So especially for the younger kids, we want them to be able to have these full body experiences, use all of their senses, and be really engaged in movement. And that is the most fruitful way for them to learn. So it's true that they could play like a phonics game, or they could play like other like skill building games, but actually the mode of the young child where they learn the most is when they're engaged with their whole body. And that is the case as people grow, and even for adults, like in their movement moment, when they're using all of their senses, they have the most capacity to learn. And there's another side too, not just the passivity or like the learning coming through the finger or through the abstract concepts. There's also this. There's also something that happens in the imaginative life of a person who is receiving too many images that are fixed and that they can't necessarily digest. So there's actually a ton of mainstream research in psychology and neurobiology and education to show that the more mediatized images children are exposed to, the more rigid they become in their thinking and the less they're able to express things in detail. And so when we want students to be able to imagine a princess, for example, we don't want them to have like a fixed Disney image. We want them to be able to craft their own. What color skin they have, what hair they have, how they dress, what their voice sounds like, what their body shape is, all of that, we want that to come from their own inner imagining, rather than being this image that gets imposed on them from the outside. So it's related to the way I was talking about our school and the feeling here that it's a place that we actively build together, not just a place that you get plunked down into and like receive these things that maybe are or aren't related to your own experience. So for these two things, for whole body learning and for imagination, there's so much research that shows that unrestricted screen time or too much or too early actually dampens the ability of those capacities to develop.
And Ms. Davis, I totally believe that because I am a homeschool mom and that's something I believe in too, and that's why I so love Waldorf education. So thank you. Let's move on to our next question, which is, why should I send my child to a Waldorf school? I guess you almost answered that with all the above questions, but yeah, if you were to say something to a parent watching this video, why should I send my child to a Waldorf school?
You know, I feel a little bit conflicted about these kinds of questions because I see how so many different educational paths can lead to growth, to development, to learning. And I'm not so naive as to think like, hey, at our school we have it all figured out, or even, hey, in our movement we have it all figured out. There are blind spots in sort of every institution of learning, and so I don't want to like rush to just go like and gloss over those. But I do think the way in which the curriculum is conceived to be developmental and to be experiential, so that that children encounter learning through their own and self-initiated engagement with an activity, again, rather than as something imposed on them from the outside. So the learning is we really hope that it comes from within the child, and then in that sense, like, it's infinite. It doesn't stop at what the teacher knows. It doesn't stop at what the culture knows. It doesn't stop even at what a given age might or might not know, because it's a new person with a new and unique relationship to the world. So I think our schools are centered around this like human this human quality, in a way that other institutions have more restrictions or more outside constraints that make it difficult to make these really human-centered decisions about education. And I know that it's a luxury that we have, and I know that it's a privilege to be able to attend a private school, like to even live in a place where there are private schools. So I'm sensitive to like being the Waldorf like poster person, but it's true that I really believe in what we're doing, and I really believe that this inquiry-based, agency-based education that we have, that's not subject to like political or cultural whims in the same way that some other educational models are, like, I believe it's a gift, and I'm really proud to be a part of it.
Same here. Love it. What a wonderful answer. Let's move on to the next one, which is, what makes a Waldorf teacher unique?
This is probably not the answer you're looking for, but it's the one that is the most true to me. I know so many different kinds of educators. I was in academia before I came to Waldorf, and I know people who educate across all different kinds of learning environments. But I really think what makes a Waldorf teacher different is that they're willing to do the training and they're willing to enter into this job that pays so much less, to be honest, than other teaching settings, because there's some inner calling that makes it that, like, this is the place where my time and my talent can be expressed and where I can work in freedom. And where I can meet other people who also want to work in freedom in this way. So I know that's a little bit of a strange answer, like we're in it for the low pay, but
but we enjoy it. We
Yeah.
love being here.
yeah, there's a
I would agree
real
to that.
love and a commitment despite some of those institutional challenges.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Ms. Davis. Last question is Waldorf education relevant to special needs children?
I think that it is relevant to all children, including special needs children, especially when we work as teachers to be able to see the students as an individual and see their own unique path of growth and their own unique way of learning, and to activate, like amplify their strengths and to gently bring them along if there are weaknesses or deficiencies. It's an educational movement that actually has specific, like, special needs intentional communities as a part of it. Camp Hill community in Santa Cruz is one example of that, where it's a residential learning community for people with developmental disabilities. So this dignity in every human being and the capacity of every human being to learn and grow is something that's so fundamental. My hope is that in Waldorf education we don't pathologize differences in the way that some larger systems have to do because they need to meet certain requirements or restrictions by the state, or classifications or categorizations. Because of the way that our school is structured, I think we get to integrate all learning styles to the best that we know, and it's a really valuable thing to be able to do. That each person sees that they are, like, inherently capable of learning, and that the way they learn is not something that they have to be ashamed of, but it's a gift. Like, each person, the way that they learn is a gift to the community. So I love that we have a chance to invite all students who want to have Waldorf education to be a part of that.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Ms. Davis, this is so good. So I'm with my colleague here, Bani Mejian, and she is the Waldorf School of the Peninsula's high school pedagogical administrator. Hi, Bani.
Hi.
So I have a few questions for you about our school and about Waldorf education in general for all my audience. So let's get started.
Okay.
How did you originally meet Waldorf education?
It's a good question. So when I had my first daughter, it was clear that my husband and I had different philosophies about education. He'd been private school educated, I'd been public school educated. And so I went to the library, I checked out every book I could on education.
Okay.
And I came to this one, I don't even remember the title of it, but I remember the woman's story where she described children coming into school with these lights in their eyes. She was a teacher. She said that, children come into school, they're new in school, and they have this light in their eyes, and they love school, and then somewhere along the way the light goes out. And she said for her and with her kids, she found that the local Waldorf school had a way of keeping that love for learning alive. And it just resonated with me. So I looked in our local directory to see if we had any Waldorf schools close by, and that's one thing led to another, and yeah, we enrolled her in that
That's wonderful.
program.
And where were you that time?
We lived in St. Louis, Missouri.
Oh wow. So how many Waldorf schools are in the world approximately?
There are over 1,000, like right around 1,000 in like 64 countries. And then there are also little budding programs in kindergartens that are almost 2,000 in about 74 countries.
Yeah, because my cousins in India go to Waldorf schools.
Oh, yeah?
So yeah.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Let's move on to the next question. That is, what is unique about Waldorf education, and how is it different from other schools?
This one's trickier to put in concise words, but so Waldorf education cares about the spiritual side of developing human beings,
Okay.
and operates, but not out of some canned spiritual philosophy, but more that human beings are way bigger than what you see, that there's something deeper and bigger, and that we each come into the world with some sort of purpose. That if I can develop it in you, this sense of who you are, that you can really get in touch with what it is that you came here to do, and that what we want to do is help you find what your unique work is. But we don't just look at your hand and your heart and your head, and that's not all we're educating. We're trying to pull in these other components, the big part of being human.
Right.
Yeah.
Very holistic.
Yeah.
That's it. Okay. Lovely. And that's something you feel is missing in other schools.
Well, it's just like it's not as explicitly worked with the way we can work with it here in this school.
Yes.
Certainly, there are schools that are
Of course, yeah.
that are associated or affiliated with religious organizations that have those pieces to it. This one's more about we're all human beings. We all have a spiritual component to us. How do we work with that and develop it so that we can grow human beings who are interested in solving really massive problems and helping mankind continue to develop and evolve.
That's true. I definitely see that in this school. Great. Let's move on to our next question. That is, what about our school makes you the proudest? And can you share a favorite story or memory that you have?
I love so many things about our school, but a few weeks ago, our 10th grade put on a play, and because of COVID, we have all these limitations, so we can't have an audience like we would normally do of parents and family members. So the teacher had to get really creative. She worked with the students to come up with, she worked first of all to come up with a play that she thought would be meaningful to these students and work with themes that they care about. So then she had them, as they were learning the play, pick up the spirit of that author's style and then write their own poetry related to, trying to imagine who they are in the world and how the world sees them. And so then they put together this production that incorporated eurythmy and poetry, and they would do a portion of the play and then share some of their original work. And they shared it to small audiences throughout the school day of just different students and groups and of teachers and students here at the school. And at the end of the day, that's when I watched the performance. I was just so blown away with how, even given all these limitations, just how beautiful their work was and how present they were. It was such an amazing experience to be part of and to receive that. And then the really neat part of it was at the end, the students were in the classroom cleaning up and saying goodbye to each other. And like most plays, they didn't want to leave each other. But they started singing together out in the parking lot, and I don't know, it just like the whole school had this real warm feeling to it after what they did all day. It was a good.
And that's the thing about Waldorf, right? That warmth and that togetherness, that unity that we all have here. That's something I love. And then my last question: what's the best advice for students or parents looking for a school?
That's a good question. I think you have to feel, can you see yourself here? Can you see yourself in the people? Can you see yourself and do you feel drawn to it? It's one thing to make a connection with, sure, the school has great results and I'm going to get a great education, but there's also a feeling side to, when you look at any school and in a learning community, and if you feel that connection to that community, then that's what I would look for.
Right. So do you see yourself?
Yeah. Can you see yourself here? Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Bani.
Yeah, sure. You're welcome. Thanks for asking.
Of course.